Hey guys, Ricky here, owner of DoDContract.com and host of the Government Sales Momentum podcast. Before we get started, I wanted to tell you about our most popular free training, where we teach you the very first step you need to take to sell products and services to the U.S. military. Go to DoDContract.com/first, and we're going to show you how much the Department of Defense spends on your product or service each year. You know, the DoD is one of the biggest single purchasers of goods and services in the world, yet most small businesses never even attempt to sell to them. And look, they buy more than weapon systems. They're buying everything from food and office supplies to medicine, HVAC units, accounting services, legal services. The list goes on. You know, the only way to make success happen for you is to take action and get started. We'd love to help you consistently win 6 to 8 figure contracts with the Department of Defense. Head over to DoDContract.com to get started now, or DoDContract.com/first to see if defense contracting is right for you. Now on with the show. All right, Ricky Howard here with the Government Sales Momentum podcast and DoD Contract Academy. And today I'm here with Brian Streem. Hey, Brian, how's it going today?
I'm good. Appreciate you taking the time and looking forward to the chat.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to getting an update because, you know, we first met, I want to say, I might be wrong on this, but I want to say it was either at AFWorks or DIU in Boston at the actual facility. Does that sound right?
Yeah, so I met you very early in kind of our defense. I knew nothing about defense when we kind of met. This was this was pre-pandemic, probably a few weeks. Pandemic might have been raging, but nobody knew it was raging yet at that time. But yes, I was in Boston. We were at my company got into this TechStars DoD AFWorks funded program where essentially AFWorks, the Air Force were essentially looking to inject innovative technology companies into the DoD. And we got into this 10-person cohort that was run by TechStars, which is like a very well-known kind of like third-party technology accelerator where essentially the DoD went to TechStars and was like, hey, we need to find innovative companies, but we don't know where to look. We don't know how they think or their lingo, but you guys at TechStars do. So the DoD hired TechStars to essentially like run their accelerator. And I think there was like a few thousand companies that applied and they accepted 10 companies into this program. So I moved to Boston. I live in New York City. So I moved to Boston for this program. And I kind of realized that I was a little in over my head with kind of all this defense acquisition kind of stuff. It was kind of a steep learning curve. So yes, we met through kind of like I was trying to find folks to help me break into the defense space, essentially. And that's how we got connected.
Yeah,
My initial, just one quick thing. I was actually kind of like shocked. My initial impression of kind of like the DoD stuff when I got into it was, I kind of assumed that I have no defense background whatsoever. We were kind of building this technology, quite frankly, for like the Hollywood filmmaking world.
Right.
And I just kind of assumed the DoD had all this stuff already. And when I kind of got to Boston to be part of this program, I really quickly learned that, they don't really have any of this stuff. So we should build it for them. So that's like a little bit of, when and how we met.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's an interesting program to jump into. And I think because it can be overwhelming, and it is for a lot of companies, especially new to, defense contracting or government contracting in general, but to be able to dive into a program like that and be surrounded by people that kind of understand the lingo and have been working in it and be with other companies that are kind of new. I think it's a nice way of I guess, trial by fire and just learning quickly. And it's funny too, the DoD, a lot of people assume the Department of Defense has everything or, are the subject matter experts, but that's why we can get into this later. It's why the whole market research phase, exists in acquisition. So we can go out to the actual experts, which are like you and other business owners, and actually figure out, hey, what do we need? What, who should we be putting on contract? What are the new innovations out there? And that's kind of how we find that out. But I think that you actually it gave us a good segue to just kind of talk about who you are and kind of Brian pre-company here. You started talking about Hollywood and everything else. So maybe we could talk a little bit about, hey, who are you, and where'd you come from, and
Yeah, sure.
what made you start your business?
Yeah, sure. So I actually started this company in like it's been a minute, but we kind of went through a pivot. So I started in like 2013, 2014 in drones. So I had I had a company where we were flying essentially drone missions for Hollywood movies. So we did kind of anytime you saw a drone shot in a Netflix or an HBO movie or TV show, there was a good chance it was my company like executing those drone missions. So I went to NYU. I studied film production. I've always been very interested in kind of unique image acquisition technologies.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like what a movie is. It's like a camera capturing this, like whatever the scene is. So I'm very interested in kind of like novel and unique photography, videography type technologies. And so my company, we did drone cinematography for Spielberg movies and Fast and the Furious movies, and we did it for Oscar-winning Best Picture films, and we were probably the biggest company in like the world doing that stuff.
Wow.
So I had a couple offices across the country. We did projects in Europe, and it was a really tough business, and it kind of wasn't. It wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. I mean, I remember I bought, for some stupid reason, I decided to buy a big exotic Swedish drone that was very expensive in like 2013 or 2014. I was just like, oh, like this is something that people are going to want. People are going to want to like fly these drones around and take pictures with them. And went to Sweden a couple times to investigate this drone. The drone we ended up taking that drone. We flew into Kiev and filmed Chernobyl with it as kind of like a marketing stunt. So I was probably the first person to like film Chernobyl with a drone. That kind of came in vogue. I think Time magazine called it the best drone video of 2015 or something like
Oh,
that.
really?
But
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, so that kind of like started it, and then we got on all these big movies. The business was tough. It was Hollywood movie directors, they want faster, more aggressive kind of aerial photography. And it was a service business. It also wasn't really exactly what I wanted to do. I was kind of young. I mean, I was in like my mid-20s at this time, and the business kind of like it. What I wanted to do was actually what we're doing today at Vermeer, but at the time, the technology simply didn't really exist to do what I wanted, and I was not yet smart enough to figure out how to kind of like the appropriate business model for it. So we were getting paid like per job on these for these movies. Sometimes we were charging $15,000 to $20,000 a day, but
Wow.
still it was still not enough. It was still not but it was still not enough money. Like I know it
Yeah.
sounds like a lot of money, but it also like wasn't enough money. Like these were like really big, expensive, complicated drone shoots with a ton of equipment and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then what happened in 2016, 2017, I put on a HoloLens for the first time, Microsoft HoloLens augmented reality headset. And I kind of had like an oh shit kind of moment. I'm like, okay, this is what I've wanted to do. And this is kind of is more of my vision of what's been in my brain for the last couple of years. Because one of the problems we had doing Hollywood movies was that directors had a vision in their brain on what they wanted the camera to do and what they wanted the shot to look like.
Yeah.
But it was very hard to kind of articulate that vision to our sales team, our operations team, our drone pilots, our camera operators. So when I kind of put on a HoloLens, I kind of went, okay, this is how we're going to do this kind of like use this AR VR headset to like manipulate the drones and visualize the data. So I started to I made a very hard decision in 2017, 2018. I decided to essentially totally pivot away from the services and focus on building this very exotic AR VR drone mission planning system that has a couple other kind of cool features, GPS denied features and autonomy features and things of that nature. People thought I was crazy when I decided to kind of pivot away from the service. I mean, we were doing a few $1 million of revenue and the business was profitable, but I had a lot of conviction that it was like the wrong thing to stick with, and it just I just wasn't happy doing it. So if I was, and that my naivete was probably if I kind of knew how hard it was going to be to pivot, I probably never would have done it. So the fact that I didn't know helped me actually do it. And then I kind of spent 2 years building this AR VR toolkit to control drones, and then I ended up meeting a gentleman who a guy named Warren Katz, who was running this Techstars DoD program in Boston that I mentioned, and he pretty much said, "Hey, the DoD would love this." And my answer was like I said, my thought was like, don't they have this already? Like what on earth, what on earth could I possibly provide? Like, what do you mean? Like they've never seen this before? They don't have this. Don't they have a crashed UFO somewhere that that they've referred and pretty much I learned, no, they don't. And like, they could use this. So, and then when I kind of got to the program is kind of like when I learned about defense and stuff like that.
Sure. Interesting. So that was your first kind of initial, I guess, DoD related thing, right? It wasn't, was it a SBIR program? Did you receive an initial SBIR and a little stipend?
Yeah. So the program was in essentially it was essentially like 5 months of just kind of like making intros to folks inside of DoD. Kind of, I mean, I probably had never. It had probably been like, I couldn't name an instance, quite frankly, in my recent life before this where I had spoken to someone in uniform. I was just so far, like I couldn't name an instance where I ever spoke to a colonel, where I ever spoke to a general, a sergeant. It was just like a major, like it just was not part of my kind of world at all.
Right.
So the program kind of gave an opportunity to kind of like meet some of these people. And then I kind of learned about the SBIR program. And honestly, when I learned about the SBIR program, I remember I was floored by it. I remember I was standing at the office of my mentor, the guy named Warren, who was running the program, and I was just like, what the hell are you talking about? 3 times a year, the government hands out you have at the time I thought it was like a 15% chance of winning $1 million. Like that is the best odds in the universe for winning $1 million. Like I can't believe that. I subsequently have learned, I think it's probably more like 6 or 7% chance, which still, even 6 or 7% chance is still like the best odds in the universe for winning $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, it's for a lot of people, if you're looking at, and we can get into what SBIR is, just in case someone is listening and they don't understand. But I mean, even a lot of companies out there that are looking for like venture capital, right? Or they have a startup and they're looking for funding. Often the SBIR program is a nice either alternative or addition to what they're trying to do to raise money, and the government there's grants and other things as well. But that's really interesting. Okay, so you found out about SBIR. So what happens next?
So I kind of, I was kind of intimidated. There were 9 other companies in this program I was in, this Techstars program, and a couple of the other CEOs of the other companies, they had kind of former colonels and former colonels who were the founders of those companies, running those companies. Right. And in order to win a SBIR, you need like an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, signed by a customer in the DoD. And it pretty much says we propose for $1 million. We're going to do this stuff. We're going to take our existing product and we're going to kind of make these tweaks on it for you, this DoD customer. So you need kind of like an end customer and an end user signature. They're not committing any at this stage. This is a direct to phase 2 SBIR from AFWorks. So direct to phase 2. So you don't need to do a phase 1, which I think is 50 or 100K. This is direct. So you could propose a time machine. You could propose whatever you want.
Yep.
And as long as you find somebody who's like, we'll sign this document. We'll essentially, like, it's their time is what they're committing to kind of review the process over the 12 to 18 months if you get awarded the $1 million+ from the SBIR program. So number one, I was like, holy crap, I can't believe they're just giving $1 billion. It's an insane amount of money to 100 companies, 3 times a year. So I kind of treated it like a numbers game. I believe that you had a 20 to 30% chance of winning. So I was like, okay, if it's a 30% chance of getting one of these, I need to get 3 MOUs, because then the odds are I'll win one of them. Like, that was the way I thought about it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, so you need to get people, majors, colonels, I don't know who, but you need to get somebody to agree to sign this document. And what's in it for that? Like, it's the easiest sell in the world. It's essentially like, hey, do you want to sign? Do you want to be in cahoots with me and try to get those people's money? Like, what do they have to lose? They don't have to lose anything. Like, you're offering them this cool technology they could play with first, and be like first to the table. So I was like, this should be taking candy from a baby to kind of get these MOUs signed. So I essentially kind of, there were these other former colonels who retired, who were running these other companies in the program. I asked them how they were getting their MOU signed. And they were like, oh, I was roommates at the academy with a 2-star, which is shorthand for saying, like, I know a general. And the other guy was like, oh yeah, I know a general, and he's going to sign. And I was like really intimidated. I was like, oh shit, these guys like know people. Like, how the hell am I supposed to do this? So I decided to essentially just like cold call and cold email and cold LinkedIn anyone who I thought might listen to me. A lot, and I kind of, I probably spoke to over a year, and so now COVID happened. Mm-hmm. I moved to a log cabin by Lake Winnipesaukee, New Hampshire.
Oh, nice.
And I just spent, well, yeah, it was nice, but I spent morning, noon, and night in a cabin just cold calling and cold emailing people at the DoD to ask them if they'd sign my MOU. And I did it with a little bit more grace than that. Yeah. Like, the number one rule when I kind of had with doing this stuff is like, what I had going for me was like, I made really cool demo videos of the technology, because people were like, oh, you need a quad chart. And I'm like, I don't know, that quad chart looks stupid. So I was like, what we're doing, like, you have to appeal emotionally to people. Yeah. So like, you got to make it sexy. All the things that, like, I come from like a movie back. So I love sci-fi movies, and I was kind of like, I can't believe they don't have this sci-fi stuff that I've seen in sci-fi movies, but they've, people in uniform, they've seen those sci-fi movies too.
Of course, you guys probably share a lot of similarities, because I'm one of them. Yeah. And, a lot of people join the Air Force.
So I'm like, I'm disappointed in like that they don't have this stuff. They're probably disappointed too. So I'm like, let me start to like lean on like this, like, we're going to build the super coolest, sexiest stuff. So I had these really cool demo videos or concept videos of what we were doing or what we were proposing. And I had one basic rule, which is when I got somebody on a Zoom call, never, ever, ever under any circumstance did I open my mouth first. I always started with like, so tell me about yourself and what you do. And then, people love to tell you about who they are, what they do. And I kind of, if they said something that I didn't know, like ISR, okay, I'm like, I'm sorry, what is that? People, I had a little, again, not being naive. I think people thought it was like kind of cute. Oh, look, he doesn't know, but he's like trying to figure it out. So I was like unabashful. I probably spoke to people I shouldn't have spoken to. My links that I sent, my demo videos probably got forwarded to other people. I had people starting to reach out to me, wanting to talk to me. And I just followed up. I built a pipeline. I was methodical about it. And then I ended up getting 3 MOUs signed the first time. And then I got it blew my mind. I got awarded, two of them. But the thing that I think really kind of like harp on here is that by asking people what their problem is, like there's kind of there's a magical, like, don't be, you can't pitch something like that's like just stupid.
Right.
Like I asked them like who they were, what their problem was, and then I asked them, oh, tell me more about that problem. Tell me more about that. Tell me more. Is this a thing? Is this a thing? Sometimes that would go nowhere.
Yeah.
But like more often than not, like somehow you got to take whatever their problem is or whatever you're kind of drilling into. There's a creative moment in the conversation where then you need to take whatever your thing does and make your thing solve their problem.
And pivot into that.
And to kind of pivot into that. So there's like and you have to be like quick on your feet, and you need to have like do it gracefully. And I was successful in kind of doing that. And ultimately what I actually learned from speaking to all these people is I kind of learned that a feature of our product was actually solved a bigger problem than than what I thought my product was. So like it was a kind of a case study in like market research. Like textbook, like by doing all this, I kind of learned that like the problem that everyone said over and over again was GPS denied capability. GPS denied. We're very worried about GPS, and this is before Ukraine. And I literally had a spreadsheet in Google Docs that I had every column was a feature we were building, a feature we thought of building, a feature we had built and abandoned.
Yeah.
And then every time someone said one of those things, I put like an X in it. And by far and away, GPS denied was the largest thing.
So this is, can I stop you right here? Because this is amazing. And I think people are really going to love this because first of all, for people that have been involved with SBIR, just by getting those MOU signed, you have accomplished something that a lot of companies find extremely difficult to get done. So just to recap,
it was, by the way, it was extremely difficult. It was very hard. I mean, it was very hard. It was grueling. But it wasn't easy.
No, it's not. But so here's a couple just for anyone listening. Of course, SBIR programs, Small Business Innovative Research. And like Brian said, so this if you have a product or a solution commercially, typically you can make modifications for maybe a government need, right? That could be a instance of where the government might be interested in giving you a SBIR contract. SBIR phase 1, typically it's like a study and it's low dollar, like you mentioned, 150 grand. SBIR phase 2, that's where you're actually doing the thing, building the thing, modifying, or maybe you're testing it on a military base. And now I think the latest one was like 1.3 million-ish, the last round.
I think that's right. Yeah.
But so what's really interesting about this SBIR program, right? Which separates it from everything else in defense contracting is that, normally, like, and we're going to talk about like where you're going next and where you're looking at, but, if you wanted, a $20 million contract with a government enterprise or 30 million or whatever it is, that's probably not a SBIR program, although it could be, TACFI or StratFi. But typically you need an acquisitions team to put you on contract, right? So that's like 0.1% of all of the military people, all the government people out there, which means that the guys that are typically selling products and they're talking to the users, they don't get anywhere because they can't make purchases from them, right? They're not going to buy, they wouldn't even know where to start to buy like $100,000, you name what it is. But with SBIR, now, like you said, you're using somebody else's money, the SBIR program money. You're using somebody else's contracting team, the SBIR contracting team. Now you can reach out to the users and the people that would actually be interested in what you have to potentially get them to sign an MOU, which is what you need for a phase 2, right? Not a phase 1. So it's really interesting. It's an interesting way of selling to the government and developing a network while you're doing that and kind of getting an idea of who the users are and the acquisitions people and maybe the requirements people. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of set the groundwork for everyone. So now you've got the phase 2. That's the golden nugget everyone's looking for in SBIR. So what happens next?
Yeah. So, so what happens then is I kind of, I go, I'm like blown away. I'm floored. I'm like, holy crap. We won 2 of these things. And then I kind of, the next time up, we get 3 additional MOUs. And we get awarded all 3 of them. So wow. in a span of 8 months, I got like 5 direct to phase two SBIRs. Now, I also just want to say, like, that is incredibly rare. I cannot actually find a duplicate of that, and it was really, really hard to do, but I was kind of like, wow, it's $1 million, like 1 million free dollars. Like that is worth aggressively pursuing. And other people have kind of come to me asking me like, can you help me do that? And it's like, no, I like you like, and then I've told people like how I did it and the amount of legwork I put into it. And then people have been like, well, I don't have time for that. I'm like, all right, well then you're like not going to win. Like, you're like not going to win it. Yeah. So like, that's fine. But like, it took every ounce of effort in my body. And, and I had to work out a process to kind of, I mean, it's like a sales process. So I had to follow up with people. I had to kind of, sometimes people felt comfortable enough to give me their cell phones. Like there were people who were like, I'm going to be here until midnight at wherever I'm stationed. And like, I will call you on your cell to let you know that the colonel signed the and like some of the things got really down to the wire. I mean, things are last minute. The commander who's ever got to sign it is, and there's a whole process involved that like, I'm not aware. And sometimes you're just like hoping that this stranger who like you've built a rapport with, is going to like come through for you. And you could almost guarantee that some people will fail and some people will be like, man, I know I said I was going to, and I failed and I couldn't get the commander's signature. So that will happen. And it's happened to me. But also like, you gotta be a little like, you gotta hope, I mean, there's no easy, you gotta hold people's feet to the fire. Sometimes if people fail on you, like, it's good because then the next time, like they feel guilty and like they know, like now, like the people in uniform who are trying to help you, who are vouching for you, they don't want to look like an idiot to you. Like they want to. They a lot of times they feel. I mean, this was like a mind blowing thing. A lot of times, the majors who are kind of like the vouchers or the colonels who are kind of like we want this, Brian. We're going to do this with you. They feel blessed. They're like, wow, I'm so fortunate that you're giving me the opportunity, the colonel, the opportunity to go get this $1 million from these other people, which is like crazy to me. Like, but that's like sometimes like the dynamic. They feel so honored. And, because we've won a couple of them now, people feel like I'm like a wizard expert. So they feel like I can't, because once you get a little credibility, you get more credibility, you kind of like build off of that. So we got, we got 5 phase 2 SBIRs. We got an OTA. We're prime on an IDIQ. And like, this was kind of part of I have another very simple rule to sales, which is, you can't sell crap to people if they don't know you exist. If they know you exist, you have a 1% chance, and that's way bigger than 0% if they don't know you exist. So I just kind of let it be known. I reached out to everyone. I had, setting up phone calls, having hour-long meetings with a person that may or may not go anywhere is risky, but you build. I built relationships with people. Like I got relationships with some people that I met cold, that I went to their retirement party in Kentucky. Guys awesome. Transitioning out of SOCOM. So like I really worked. I mean, the right word is hustled. I hustled really hard, and now we just received a TAC-FI. And I raised a few $1 million, and we have customers kind of pounding at our door for some of our products. So I'm doing kind of like live demos and stuff like that right now. And yeah, I'm very fortunate that the government has all these kind of non-dilutive, the non-dilutive capital. And like, listen, I had a decision maker at one of the soft units recently tell me that there's a 2% transition rate from a SBIR to a program of record. So phase 2 SBIR might sound like the holy grail, but it's actually, it's not. It's like there's still a lot of slog to go through. And I don't have all the answers. I'm still trying to kind of figure it out. But I think one of the foundational pillars of it is if you are building something that really solves a big problem for them, that's how you like succeed. Like, I have tried to kind of solve problems that no one cared about before, and that's like no one, like, it's like you got to sell, like, you don't want to sell something. It's like the worst thing in the world, like trying to convince somebody that your thing is better or cheaper or sexier. That's like the worst thing, to try to sell somebody. What you want is, you want somebody begging you, please take my money. I am so desperate. The pain of my problem is so immense and so big. Even if your thing doesn't work that well, if it works a little bit, I'll be willing to pay you $5 million for it. So like, you kind of, so it's not a function of selling somebody. And the DoD is so big and so large. And in this case, we're talking about like Air Force servers. The Air Force is so big and the military is so big that it's not a function of trying to sell someone. It's about trying to find, you're more of a detective. You're more trying to find the person who the pain resonates with so much, and they have the money and they're willing to give you $5 million of it, or whatever dollar amount is. And that person's out there. You just got to make sure the problem you're solving is big enough, great enough. There are requirements for, and like sometimes, I also have kind of like learned, like, there's a process where, you have to meet with requirements, because sometimes the requirements people don't even know what exists. They don't know what's out there.
No,
so
absolutely not.
Yeah. So you need to like let them know about what you're doing, because if they go, wow, I had no idea that Brian Streem could travel through time. Now that I know he's got a time machine, I'm going to make it a requirement on the next blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. I mean, just to give you an example of how prevalent that is, and this isn't anything against the acquisitions community, which I came from, the defense acquisitions community, but there are so many different contracts out there in so many different agencies. Like you said, even in the Air Force, you have different commands, you have different units, you have hundreds of bases, you have all of these things that are going on contract, right? I remember we were working on a cyber effort once, and a solution we needed around the time of insider threat was actually on contract in 3 different agencies for the exact same thing that nobody knew what they were on contract for. So it was the type of thing where we all could have used it, but we just basically paid 3 times what we should have. And they often don't know. And with SBIR in particularly, you might be about to jump in on this, but one of the advantages of SBIR Phase 2 graduates, which a lot of people don't know, not only companies, but contracting officers and acquisitions teams, is if you're a SBIR Phase 2 graduate, that gives a contracting team the ability to give you a sole source contract, essentially, the ability to put you on contract and avoid competition. And, we've actually had to help some of our students and clients put that language together to teach the contracting officer on the other side that, hey, you actually don't need to compete this. This doesn't have to be difficult. Here it is on a silver platter, So sorry to break in there, but
no. So I think you come to a good point, which is that some of the contracting people are like brand new at the job. They don't know anything. Sometimes it comes down to a personality. Sometimes you have great contracting people who are like, hey, call me on my cell. And then you're like, hey, contracting person, how's it going? And like, they'll help you and they'll be knowledgeable. Sometimes they won't be knowledgeable. So you kind of need to like help them along.
Yep.
And yes, the amount of I use the time machine to be hyperbolic, but like, the government definitely invented a time machine, but it's in a closet that someone forgot about. They don't have the key to it. It's running on Windows 32-bit and everything else is Windows 64. It's just a hodgepodge of mess and no one's talking to anyone. I mean, that's part of my other, I'm like, aren't they doing that like over there? It's like, yeah, but like those people over there have no idea what's going on over there.
Yep.
And that is actually like, that is profound and rampant. And I suspect that that's somewhat by design, because I suspect it's both by design and just lack of effort, or just like it's just too big to kind of. But like it's like I assume you want to have redundancy, so you want like multiple time machines working. So if one time machine company goes out of business, you have another time machine. But I also suspect just no one's looked and no one's kept a database of who's built time machines over the last 65 years for the Department of Defense.
Sure. I mean, when you talk about especially the big programs and the big weapon systems, you have so many people from the general, from the PEO, all the way down to like the individual program managers and the contracting officers. I mean, hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people and billions and billions and billions of dollars. And so now you might develop, like there was an instance where we had two weapon systems and they couldn't communicate with each other. Like we find after they're already built that, the data links don't work and they weren't, and we fixed that since then. But I mean, that's the type of thing where, everyone doesn't communicate. So you bring up a lot of excellent points, but one of them is don't assume that your Department of Defense or government acquisitions guy or gal on the other side knows everything, because they don't. And often it is up to the company. In fact, the most successful companies are doing just what you're doing. They're talking to people. They're helping them. They're basically helping the contracting teams and the PMs put them on contract. Like, hey, making it easier for them. This is how you can go about doing that and connecting the dots. Because I mean, a lot of times they don't have time to connect the dots.
Yeah, and that yes, you got to make it easy for people to like sign like you just got to like make it like fluid, respond quickly. It's respond quickly, politely. I also kind of like I also worked out there. I had in order to get the MOU signed, in order to actually, there's a lot of let's just say administrative stuff that goes into it. Like I actually have I've written none of the white paper. Like my CTO fortunately never wrote a phase 2 SBIR before in his life, but I'm like, you're doing it and you're going to figure it out. Okay. So it was kind of like, I was the guy who like buttered the customer up, built the relationships, followed up with them, schmoozed them. Then he would kind of work on it with maybe another engineer. If I needed like an astrophysicist to fill in 2 paragraphs on a technical that I hire an astrophysicist to write, I kind of piecemeal, people I also think like, I have some controversial opinions on the subject matter. Like there's also just like a lot of, we'll help you do this. We'll write your proposal for you and do that. I've never done that. I decided like people who like, if that's a hard business model for the person who's writing the SBIRs. So I kind of decided like, well, if I need an expert in astrophysics, like I'm just going to like hire an astrophysicist. Like I don't want like a broad here's how you win and stuff. And then I have a guy who's a retired colonel in innovation who kind of like polishes to make sure all the lingo is kind of DoD lingo.
Yeah.
That recipe worked, but it wasn't like easy to, that whole thing wasn't easy to put together. And then, people like that you have on your bench so that if a contracting officer has a question, you could use your resource to kind of help them solve the problem. It's impossible to know everything.
That's a really great way of approaching it too, because I mean, eventually companies get big enough where they have proposal writing teams and everything else. But, at the end of the day, especially with SBIRs, we're talking about usually small business, and nobody cares as much about the solution or knows about it like you do. Like that's just common sense, right? Nobody knows about it and nobody cares about it as much as you. And frankly, the people I know that have had the biggest success have either, if they didn't write it themselves, they had their teams, they were doing something like you did, maybe they hire someone to, and people come to me for the same stuff, right? But you have to be involved and you can't just write something generic. But the other thing is too, and we're kind of talking over it, but the fact that you've won so much, it's not just, part of it is, but it's not just that you have hustled and you have been smart about the way you've gone after it. Your technology has to be amazing and innovative to have won this. I mean, a lot of people are they propose things that aren't amazing, right? And a lot of people have technologies and solutions that aren't that great. And, although some of that stuff does make it on contract, the government's also not stupid, right? So I know we've talked a lot about how, we have to educate the person on the other end, but also don't assume that they're stupid, right? So the fact that you've had so much success and you've been, I think, humble about this, but really speaks to what you've created. It really must be amazing. And I'd also like to learn a little bit more about, if you can talk about it, like what development have you done in the SBIR program? Like how did that take you from kind of what you described in the beginning with like that mission planning, drone software to, now, because a lot of these pivots that you've talked about, are essential. And that's what a lot of also good companies are doing. They have one thing, the government needs a slight tweak. You pivot over and you help them solve the problem.
Yeah. So I don't, and just to kind of address like a little point, I don't think there's a silver bullet as to like how to win SBIR. It comes down, I mean, I think it's a lot of factors.
Mm-hmm.
There's luck, avoiding bad luck. There's hustle. There's good technology that solves real pain points, making sexy demo videos, or like making something like making, I often say this, inside the company, like whatever, like the demos, they need to be emotionally appealing.
Yeah.
Like, like it needs to like warm the spirit of the imagination. Like it needs to like get people's juices creative and all their juices flowing. Um, and then the last is it's in the hearts and minds of judges on a panel that you'll never meet, and you'll never, or maybe you'll meet them, but you won't know that they judged your thing. So it comes down to a rack and stack. I mean, there's just so many nuanced things to it.
Yeah.
Um, so it's hard to know exactly what the answer is, but it's a combination of those factors. If you have the best technology and you don't hustle, it's not going to work. If you have, moderate technology with a great video, that shows what it could be with a little bit of hustle, okay, that's like a better, that's like a better cocktail for success than
Right.
just a time machine alone that sits in a closet that no one knows about.
Right.
So it's multifaceted. So in terms of kind of like the product kind of started as this AR drone mission planning software designed for Hollywood movies,
Right.
to kind of plan really complicated drone aerial photography shots. So the user kind of puts on a 3D HoloLens headset, and they see kind of like a pre-existing 3D map as like a hologram in front of them. And then the user essentially is able to plan, like in this AR 3D environment, kind of plan like what they want the drone to do from like the camera's perspective. So it's kind of like, okay, so you're kind of like moving a little avatar. It's like you kind of move like a little avatar of a drone and like this like AR sand table. And then you essentially send that mission to the drone, and the drone autonomously executes what you kind of pre-visualized and pre-planned in the AR world. So ultimately and we had a feature of it that was kind of this essentially to kind of make the shot more precise. We were kind of comparing what the camera of the drone was looking at to the existing 3D model. So if you kind of wanted the drone to land on a certain window of a certain building, we were using computer vision algorithms on board the drone to kind of match what the camera was seeing to the pre-existing 3D map. And it's like a Google Earth or like One World Terrain 3D map that's on board the drone to kind of make the shot that you had planned more precise. So when I did my kind of market research, I found that everyone needed GPS denied capability. And that's kind of was the feature of our mission planning. So I kind of made that its own product. So we call that visual positioning system. So the way that works is we essentially compare EO/IR camera lens systems to a pre-existing One World Terrain map, which is a global database of the world. They take a satellite and oblique stereoscopic satellite images and generate like kind of a 3D map of the world. And it's very accurate. It's 0.5 meter to a meter accuracy. Wow. And essentially we compare what the camera is seeing to this existing map. And when we find a similar instance of it, we're able to essentially figure out your location. So customers really love that because it's totally passive. It doesn't emit anything. You can't spoof it. You can't jam it. We have a version for like kind of aerial platforms. We have a version for ground vehicles as well. And we also have a version for ATAC. So people could just like kind of take their phones, kind of take a couple photos on their smartphone device, and then we process it and we tell you your position based purely off of kind of like the computer vision algorithms that we're using. Okay. So there's a tremendous, so that is an example of kind of like, that was a feature of our AR drone mission planner, but now it's like its own product that and I learned that's I would say GPS is like a foundational product, like helicopters, missiles, boats, planes, jeeps, tanks, ATAC, everything uses it, and the DoD is very concerned about losing it under a number of different scenarios. And then the other, so our kind of AR VR mission planner has now become like kind of a swarm mission planner. So users kind of like in a AR or VR mixed reality environment, they kind of like identify on the 3D map an area of interest. And it's kind of like in this area of interest, I want the drone swarm to look for a person holding a gun or a person or a particular license plate. So you kind of use the AR and VR to kind of assign computer vision enabled tasks to the drone swarm. And then they go look for it. So there's a lot of complexity there. There's like autonomy on the edge of the drone. There's computer vision. There's the AR VR element to it. And then the other thing that we're working on is, so somebody from the Space Force somehow saw our demo video of kind of like the drone mission planning in augmented reality. And they said to me, I'll never forget the email. The email was, I saw your video. It's very cool. I get it for drones. I work on satellites and maneuvering satellites in space. I think there could be applications for doing AR satellite mission planning, but I don't want to lead you down a rabbit hole. To which I responded, wait, whoa. Tell me about this rabbit hole. And then we ended up, winning a couple of contracts. Essentially, the question was, do you think this will work on satellites in space? And I so, what am I, an idiot? I go, yeah, sure, why not? Yeah, of course it'll work.
Yeah.
So we got a couple contracts for that, and that's very again, that's like your typical sci-fi movie. Somebody's looking at like a hologram of the universe, and they zoom in and they want to kind of like plan a complicated satellite mission or a space vehicle maneuver. And I kind of built on from there.
Yeah, and I mean, well, let's see. It's I guess September now, 2022. I know Space Command and Control is a huge topic right now, and there's a lot of work that they're doing on that. That's amazing. You're having incredible success, and then you just want to TACFI as well. So you're it sounds like you're walking down a path to keep developing some of this technology. You mentioned you have an OTA, which is other transaction authority, and you say you're a prime on an IDIQ, a recent IDIQ.
Yeah, we're prime on the ABMS IDIQ, that of which I think it's got a huge ceiling, but I know that the ABMS program has like controversial. They don't have any more money. I don't know exactly what's going on there.
Yeah,
but
we could talk after. I was the ABMS program manager before I retired, so we could talk after.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but I think for us, like kind of like the lowest hanging fruit is like, there are people with immediate needs for some of our GPS denied stuff. Like immediate needs. It's funny. Immediate needs to me sounds like we need this today, but also like government moves slow. So immediate needs, it's like it could be months before contracts happen and stuff like that. Yeah. But and the mission plan, the visual positioning system. I mean, we're doing live demos of that for customers right now who really need that and want to integrate that into several programs of record. So hopefully, that next time I see you, that's kind of where we'll be then.
That's amazing. Are you guys attending a lot of conferences?
Yeah, tons. I mean, we were at SoftBank a few months ago. We there's a lot of kind of smaller conferences that are kind of more like in the know kind of. I mean, one of the things that like our success. I mean, I've now been fortunate. I've hired BD guys that have 20 years of experience who worked at Leidos and General Dynamics and AeroVironment. So I've like built a team that like knows more about the space than I do and has had success, winning $100 million prime, $100 million contracts for programs of record, getting things under program of record and stuff like that.
Right.
So somehow there is for sure a grapevine of of like small niche conferences and stuff like
Mhm.
that. That like I don't. You have to like be in the know somehow, and like if you build enough relationships, like people will start to forward you things that you should attend that are kind of
Yep.
small and niche. But then yeah, we're going to be at AUSA, and we're going to
Okay.
be at AFA, AFA. I think there's a Modern Warrior symposium coming up. I think that's a Marine initiative or event coming up in the next week or two.
Okay.
Yeah, we're doing a ton of. We were just at GIFX, which is like an experiment.
Yep.
There are more of these conferences and events than I know what to do with.
Yeah, no, there really are a great way to find sponsors and whatnot for things like SBIRs, and just let people know what you have. We're coming towards the end of the hour, but I want to get just some final thoughts on maybe what your advice would be for a small business out there that maybe has an innovative technology that's thinking about selling to the Department of Defense or one of the other government agencies. Go, no go. What would you tell them?
That you really need to, if you're actually serious and you really want to do it, you need to kind of dedicate your own like almost 100% commitment to it, or you need to hire someone who's going to dedicate like 100% commitment to it, and it's going to be really hard to do. I think that people think that they're just, oh, like I'm just going to go after this million free dollars, and like they're going to put like a half-assed effort into it, and it's just like not going to work. The
Yeah.
program also has gotten, I think, because they've done such a good job of marketing the phase two SBIRs, but the amount of dollars I don't think has really scaled in the same way that applicants are applying for it.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding is it's like you have like a 6 to 7% chance of winning a phase two SBIR, which is they get like I think that, and like this is kind of like I think that I don't know where I heard this, and I think this is from a somewhat good source. So 1,000 something applications, and they accept under 100 of them, like 80 or something. I think it's like something like 80 or so of them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really hard. It takes a full commitment, and you gotta like not lie to yourself about whether or not what you're doing, like whatever you're building, like actually like has like an application. You know, like I suspect that they're going after really kind of exotic, cool. I suspect this. I don't know this to be true.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that they're going after like exotic, sexy things at like a TRL 5, 6 ish. I think.
All
I
right.
suspect. Um, and like like it's funny. Like there are people who approach me at GIFX or who are like, oh, I don't want none of that 5 or 6. Like, what do you got that's a TRL 1 or 2? Like, there's different like there are people out there with other money that like we want the thing that's certain to fail, but like maybe if it works, it'll be huge.
Right.
So like those are people. I think those are like DARPA people and people with DARPA type money and stuff like that. Which is funny because like you often are trying to like kind of get your TRL up and up and up, and then you find
Yeah.
people who are like, no, tell me you're building a portal to another dimension and let's go after it. And you're like, all right,
Let's do it.
yeah, let's do it. How much money do you got?
Yeah.
So sometimes I even think am I thinking big enough? Like, I wonder if there's an idea out there, like, you got to find the right problem and the right kind of, sometimes you got to find the right problem and the right crazy enough idea and the right lunatic inside of the government who has $75 million burning a hole in their pocket. And like, this has not happened to me, but people have, told me stories, they got to spend the money. They're going to lose it.
Hey, that's not just a story. I'll tell you that. I mean, at the end of the year, right now, we are in September. It's the end of the government fiscal year, and this is Fallout Fund season.
Yeah.
This is the part of the year. So, like, and I'll give you the last word, but just for everyone listening, the government does want to spend. This is what federal agencies think. This is what every office thinks. If I don't spend the money that the government has given me, then I am not going to get the same budget next year. And I need that budget because their bills are always increasing. So then they take the fallout funds and they rack and stack what they're going to do with it. And so like this is the type of year where, and actually it starts a couple months before now, because right now it's all going on contract. But this is where all the good idea fairies come out. They rack and stack them all, and they start spending money. So no, that's absolutely true.
And that goes to kind of like so yes, you always got to have like a $50 million proposal like in your draw that you're like ready to like give to someone if they like, like that, and it's happened to some mentors that I know that phone call of like, hey, what do you got that's like we could spend $50 million on?
Yeah.
Which kind of goes to my other thing, which is like, the only way to kind of get that phone call of somebody who desperately needs to spend $50 million is they have to know you and they have to have like an existing relationship with you.
Exactly.
So, and that takes time to build, to network. They got to kind of see you at events. They got to like you a little bit. They got to trust you a little bit. They got to kind of, so there's no easy answer. That stuff takes time, but may we all be blessed where somebody just calls and is desperate to give you $50 million.
That typically doesn't. There's a couple instances I could think of where I know the government has reached out to companies because they had the only thing that solves a problem. But I mean, what you really did is just spoke my thesis out loud, right? Which if I had to boil it down into two things is it's a relationship game. You have to have the relationships. It doesn't mean you have to be a prior military guy or prior government guy. You can develop those relationships just like you did.
I mean, that's the other thing. Like I had like a very Hollywood movie, like, yes, sir, no, sir. Like, oh my, like people are not like that at all. Like people are not like that. Like I've spoken to generals, some generals like, oh, let's go get coffee. I'm like, generals get coffee? Like what kind of insanity? Like, of course they do. Like, I don't know what I was thinking, but why wouldn't they? Yeah. Of course. Why not? So like, you have to be like likable and you need to be personable, and people are normal and they just kind of want to, they want to like hang out with people that they think are doing like cool things. And you also need to be, some people also in DoD, they're also transitioning, and some of them are also looking for jobs.
True. That is true.
They're actually all looking for jobs. They're all secretly, this is like they all in the back of their mind know someday that they're going to transition out and they're going to want a career outside of the military. And a lot of them have spent their whole lives in the military. So a lot of them have zero clue what that other thing is like. So they're also thinking to themselves, hey, I wonder if like this company, like they want to build relationships is kind of my point. Like they don't want to be mean to people.
No, I think most people understand that, what goes around comes around, right? So, and the military it is a short, even if you stay in for 20 years, that's still guys and gals getting out in their early 40s and they need a new career. They can't just stop working. So, you make a lot of great points there. I mean, I feel like we could keep this going for another hour. Maybe what we'll do is we'll have part two after you start working on some of the things that you talked about, and we could get an update on where you guys are and what you're doing in space.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Totally. No, this was fun. I appreciate you having me on, and looking forward to next time.
Nope. Awesome, Brian. All right. Well, take care, and thanks again for coming on.
Take care.
Hey guys, Ricky here, and hope you enjoyed this episode of Government Sales Momentum. If you did enjoy the episode, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. If you're interested in selling products and services to the Department of Defense, I have something for you that you're not going to find anywhere else in the world. The team and I created a program that takes everything you need to win defense contracts and put it into one place. Up until now, only large defense companies and a small amount of people in the know have had access to how products and services are really sold to the Department of Defense. I've taken all of that information and put it in a step-by-step training module that shows you how to consistently sell to the U.S. military. If you join our membership, not only do you get the model, but you get weekly sessions with former DoD acquisitions officers for training, guidance to answer your questions, and a community of like-minded business owners that want to partner on different opportunities for bid, for subcontracting and teaming, or just to discuss general strategy on how to sell to the DoD. You'll have access to every course I've created, every coaching session I've ever recorded, and every interview with an acquisitions professional that I've ever conducted. And we covered topics that range from defense sales planning and competitor analysis to SBIR and STTR, foreign military sales. The list goes on. Go to dodcontract.com if you are interested, and I would love to see you in the membership. Thanks.